Venice Biennale is an international exhibition for architecture, and it happens every 2 years. So in 2018, we staged the Singapore Pavilion at the Arsenale, which is in Venice. And the theme of the exhibition was called No More Free Space. It actually ends with a question mark because we wanted to kind of it be a beginning of a dialogue rather than a statement. And why no more free space is because lots of people have the perception that Singapore is very good at certain things, or quantitatively, like we're number one for this, we're super efficient at that. But really the question is, how do we think about being a qualitative economy, or a country that thinks about things qualitatively, not just quantitatively. So we reached out to the community, and we wanted to see, okay, which are the projects that we can bring along with us from Singapore to Venice, and that talks about working out of having nothing. So let's say, for example, in Singapore, we are obviously have lack of natural resources, but at the same time, we also have a lot of abundance of things like sunlight, like rain, like green, of mind space, right? Of community spirit and all that. And then how do we create interesting architecture that connects to the community, that has a kind of certain architectural value on its own, out of these constraints, or out of these lack-offs, out of having no more free space, having run out of it, then how do we start to talk about, okay, now let's get creative, and then this is what we can do out of the lack-off. So really the exhibition, both in terms of its design, in the projects that we've decided to kind of feature, creates a range of, let's say, free elements, which is the climate, freedom of the mind, which is there's no limit to the possibility of what you can activate as long as the space is created in your creative mind. And then also the last one is about community engagement. Right? So, and that then leads us to the whole concept of no more free space. So even in the pavilion, what we wanted to do was to create something out of nothing, right? So if we have nothing, how do we create something? And so we use something as translucent as acrylic. I mean, you can say that acrylic on its own, every country has acrylic. It's not only our country that has acrylic, but it's how you use it creatively to bring across a sense of what Singapore is. Can I let the people in Venice, let the visitors understand what Singapore is without saying, oh, this is what Singapore is? I don't think that is a formal identity. I don't think you can look at something and say, oh, that's Singaporean, or hey, this is Singaporean. But obviously, with the 12 projects that we've selected, the thing that ties them all together is, I want to say, a certain optimism, a certain understanding that we've always had not much, but we always try to get something out of almost not much. So it has always been something that, as Singaporeans, we try to borrow so much, we don't have water, we make our own water. If we don't have natural resources, we find our own ways, and I think that spirit of trying to maximize what we have, being precious about everything, is something that even in a small shop house that is located in architecture, we try our best to borrow light, to borrow air, and because we are so always conscious of our scarcity, that we allow our mind to expand as much as possible and really borrow from not just nature, just community, from space, from views that don't even belong to you. We try so hard to make it work. And I think that across all 12 projects, whether it's private, commercial, institute, or just community-based projects, I think that is an optimism and a can-do spirit that comes across very well.
So I think one of the kind of developments in art has to do with the kind of capabilities that we have today that even 5 years ago wasn't available. And not only wasn't available, it wasn't accessible. So that means it's either too expensive or there's no knowledge on how to use it. So giving you an example, so let's say for the Venice Biennale, this kind of structure, we use a lot of, it is really in a way art project, and we use a lot of computation. So kind of computer programming, algorithms, that would have been almost impossible 10 years ago for designers. Maybe one reason just being we did not have the knowledge. So nowadays, with the kind of knowledge being more accessible to everybody, we can start to integrate all these new techniques into how we start to create the kind of art pieces that we want. So for example, in this case, we've got 1,400 modules. In the earlier version of our structure, we had like 3,000 over, and some of them are different. They're all different sizes, and this kind of level of complexity in the artwork that will be impossible to realize without being able to use some of these new techniques and tools. So we see a lot more nowadays artists leveraging the computer, leveraging ways of making, and this is a kind of evolution or trend I see in kind of art making.